What website are you trying to translate?
Oh yeah, translate.
Chapuzas Informatico. I can't.
Informatico.
El Chapuzas Informatico.
Looks like we're live.
Hey everybody, sorry we're late. We had some issues we were trying to sort out.
Website translating.
The Steam summer sale just started, so our servers went down.
Yeah.
We also
actually didn't S3 go down yesterday morning or something?
Oh, was that the whole Cloudflare?
I think so.
Hiccup
It
thing?
was, yeah.
Does Steam use S3? I wonder if they're going to get overloaded.
What's S3?
Amazon's data centers.
I was thinking the
that'd be fun.
S3 graphics company from 1994.
Nope. We got Hamza here. We got Carbon Black, Muhammad.
I think
Whiskey Omega and Big Mama are already in the house.
It is a privilege for people to have you mispronounce their names.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Garvey. You still don't even know what that Mr. Garvey reference is.
Too old for me. Hamza is from Paris. Carbon Black is from Harrogate, UK.
Cool.
Do
we
not
get this
know
international audience
yeah.
here.
We got Lexi. We got Jesper from Copenhagen, Denmark. I think I said it right. Jesper. It's not Jesper. I know that, right? And Chuck, Tim, Dave. Agish Eagle. Oh, from Egypt. Wow.
Wow, we have an international
Big Mama in the
audience
house is from
today.
Israel. John is from Guyana. Whoops. Two different places.
Ian, who writes a lot of stuff for us on the website, is also from Israel.
Yeah. Miyagi is from the Philippines.
Wow. Yeah, truly.
Try from India.
Very
I guess it really.
international.
We'll talk about this later, but I guess it really. I will talk about this later, but
yeah,
we don't have a lot of time. Brad has a heart out.
Let's do it.
Elena has to also go as well, but I'm not going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about Ryzen 3000 performance leaks, not based on anything we have seen or any hardware that we have seen, but these are definitely leaks out on the internet. You can go find them right now.
Leaks.
Also, X570. We'll just talk about the latest on that. I don't know if we can talk about more, but. And we have a bunch of questions that we've been saving up for a while. So.
Well, yeah,
Long time.
Not intentionally, but they have been saving up. All right, and then while you're doing the intro, I'm gonna mix some strawberry kiwi with blue raspberry.
Why do you keep making it so obvious that you drink that? Don't understand. It's like
I want other people to feel my pain. I do want to get G Fuel in though.
you could just not drink it.
I know, but it's here. I mean, that'd be wasteful, right? Yeah.
My aunt used to say something to me. Would you rather waste yourself or waste the thing?
I mean, I've already wasted myself. That's far past. So.
Yeah, I've been wasted since 7.
All right.
All right, ready?
Yes.
I was checking. I have an email question we should read off too as well. Some person erroneously emailed the fullnerd@PCWorld.com.
And we got Toothless from New Zealand. It's the morning there. Wow.
My favorite dragon.
Let's do it.
In this episode of the Full Nerd, Ryzen 3000 performance leaks, X570, and your questions answered. Maybe, kinda.
Hopefully.
Brad can finally hear the music. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
Any Kleenex. Welcome to the Full Nerd, episode 98. I'm your host, Gordon Mong, with co-host Brad Charkis.
98. Hello. That's a lot.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I was thinking that's how hot it is. And of course, Elena Yee to my left.
Hi, everybody.
Checking in, and Adam Patrick Murray controlling the vertical and horizontal.
We still have not figured out what we're going to do for our 100th episode. So if you want to give us some ideas, please put them in our Discord channel or server, whatever. There's
Drunk
a link
stream.
in the stuff. Oh, yeah. Maybe we should just get drunk and then just stream out live for episode 100.
I think we should just do the traditional clip show.
Clip. It takes a lot of work. I'm sorry.
No, I mean the lazy way where we just like load random episodes.
Should we bring it up on YouTube or something?
And then you have
we just watch
the wavy effects like a 1970s episode of Happy Days.
Like we're remembering the times.
Yeah, because basically all the actors are on vacation, so they just let's just slap together the best of kind of thing. That's flashbacks.
We got We're getting some ideas in. Peter says we should do a drunk Ryzen 3000 build. Surprisingly, people are talking about Ryzen 3000. Do we have anything to talk about that?
Yeah, we do. We have some leaked numbers. Like, once again, these are leaked numbers. Although this one is looking pretty good. The first one I want to bring up is Ryzen 9 3950X 16-core. WCCF Tech called them out. Hassan says basically Geekbench score. It is smoking the 18-core Core i9 9980 in multi-threaded benchmarks, supposedly. If we believe this.
That's the 18-core chip, right?
Yeah, that's 18-core with the solder
12 versus 18?
Yep.
Yeah, 16 versus 18. And then
16. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
not
single
12.
core does pretty well as well. Pretty good as well. Let me see if there's any numbers. They don't actually show this. They do actually have the full results there, interestingly. So I'm guessing somebody tested this part and forgot to unplug it from the internet and submitted the results. But that's looking really good.
That can legit happen. I haven't done it, but I have seen other people do that and it's like, man, just don't never connect your PC to Wi-Fi and just unplug the cord, guys.
Yeah, another thing is too is I generally disconnect for testing. I've got a couple boxes pulled up for this new round of testing, but I disconnect during runs. You should be disconnected anyway because you never know
airplane
when.
mode.
Well, yeah, you never know when Windows Update is going to do something. Although airplane mode can screw with some stuff sometimes.
It can.
So depending on how they do the laptop, usually laptops.
It's hard to find the perfect balance between all the things.
But that is looking crazy, right? Because that is a $500 Ryzen 9 3950X going head to head with what is that? What is a 9980 XE? It's like $1,800 or $1,500.
Wasn't it 18?
Yeah, wasn't this the $750 chip you're talking about?
Oh, 750. You're right. Sorry, 750 versus $1,800. So basically less than half, which is interesting because I was having a discussion with another journalist talking about how technology has not really gone anywhere in the last 5 years because it's just sort of like been incremental. And I said, hey, you can get a 12-core. You're going to be able to get a 12-core Ryzen chip for $500, and a 10-core CPU was $1,723 just 2 years ago.
Dude, even an 8-core, so many years ago was really like pushing $1,000.
And I also pointed out, sorry, I don't want to take this off the road, but I also pointed out like SSD prices, terabyte SSD, $80.
No.
Right?
Yep.
100.
All right, 100. Whatever. That's pretty close.
Sorry, I can't let that one
Sometimes
fly.
it goes to 80. Sometimes you find it on sale for 80, but I mean, it's $100. Terabyte SSD was like $500 just a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I pointed all this out, and not even to mention graphics increases, all the other stuff that's done with
ray tracing,
encoding, ray tracing, all these huge quantum leaps in performance. He was like, "Is this on the Mac?" I was like, "No." I swear to God, he did ask, like, "Oh, is this on the Mac?"
That's where the air quotes came from.
Okay, you're sort of like when you're in your little, when you're in the bubble of like, I'm not seeing any of this new stuff. My MacBook that I bought used is the exact same, like barely faster than the one I bought 4 years ago. We haven't gone anywhere. It's like, dude, we got like 8-core CPUs. You've got ray tracing. What are you talking about? Is this on a Mac? No.
Yeah, some one our old not old, but the Dell XPS 2-in-1 video with the 9th gen processor that we did.
Yeah,
like a month ago before Computex, somebody had just commented on it this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, asking like, "Oh, I'm thinking about getting this between a MacBook Pro 13. Which should I do?" Like somebody tried to convince me, and I was just like, like touch 2-in-1, 9th gen processor. Like,
yeah, and
do you really need convincing?
I know, and they're actually kind of different classes of laptops too, because the 13's not as light as it used to be, and actually it's a little bit lighter, but I mean that XPS 13 2-in-1 is pretty tiny. So
yeah,
but sorry, we should steer back to desktop stuff.
Yeah. Ryzen 3000.
Hang on, I just got a whiff of what you're drinking from over here. That's not okay.
Yeah, this is a strawberry kiwi hint with Razer Respawn by Razer Blue Raspberry.
Can you smell it, Gordon?
Anyone want to try it?
I can't smell anything. I need Kleenex. My allergies will kill me. But wait a minute. You mean Did it come out as? Did he burp it out? I hope.
I did not burp. No.
No,
I think it's just wafting.
It's just that strong.
But the blue raspberry,
So
it's so weird. We did the
that
taste
would be
test, and the blue raspberry tastes very sugary, but there's no sugar in this. So, yeah.
No, it's sucralose,
Yeah.
basically.
Anyway, Ryzen 3000.
Back to 3950X, and one of them be out till September, but the leaks are already starting on that, and it's looking like a pretty smoking part. I have high confidence in these numbers. I can't say why.
Somebody was asking where did they get this part?
I don't know. So I think it's the parts are getting to vendors now.
Yep.
So that's traditionally where a lot of hardware leaks are from. And I honestly, I don't know how much of this is also intentional leaking just to mess with Intel too. So I don't know. But, you would think if you're AMD, you just want to kind of land on Intel with a surprise. But it seems like the way AMD's been wanting to work it is they've been just wanting to just continually. There's not much of a secret left. It's a slow build up, with like new leaks, new information every couple of weeks just to keep the hype train going. Got to have that momentum.
I do find it interesting, though, because I remember talking about it last episode that we were all together as well, that it's Geekbench, which I find real weird. So I think it's funny that we keep seeing Geekbench in particular over and over again.
It's, for me, when I've seen this, it makes me want to still wait to get other benchmarks before I form my final opinion of it.
Yeah, no, and obviously you always want to wait. And this is Geekbench, but I'm just going to hint that I do have high confidence that this 16-core Ryzen part is going to perform pretty damn well. I'm not going to say more, but I would not be surprised if this performance actually matches what we see when we get a final part. We'll see. We'll see. You got to wait, though. Although the interesting thing is, although nobody's reviewed it, and it doesn't actually even come out till next Sunday. Not this Sunday, but the following
a week
Sunday.
from Sunday. Yeah,
like
7/7.
a week and a half. Mm-hmm.
Somebody's already reviewed it. The world exclusive. Let's give it a shout out to, I don't know, is it El Chapuzas? This we should have Adam pronounce.
I don't know.
El Chapuzas Informatico. It has an 8-ball, but basically they claim to have reviewed a Ryzen 5 3600, which is the non-high wattage part. So it's a 65 watt TDP part. They did only review it on an X470, not an X570, but we know AMD has said there's no performance differences between the chipsets, although I do want to point out that unless the person had the latest chipset drivers, and we don't know if they did or not, and I can't rely on the translation to say, but the drivers may actually give them more performance. They have this clock ramping feature that's been improved with the new part, but you have to have the new driver for it. But the performance is looking pretty damn respectable. I mean, I'll just kick this out. Their tests, although his results are a little bit lower than what I'm seeing, on the Ryzen 5 3600 on X470, supposedly hitting 1561 instead of Cinebench 15, multi-threaded, and then and to give you context, a 2700X is 1778, and the 9900K that they tested is 1928. Then I probably for both of those are a little bit lower than what I get, but for a 65 watt part to basically, and this is crazy, it's the 65 watt part has the same Cinebench score as a Ryzen 7 1700X, which was not the low power part.
Right, and when you say that this is lower than what you get, what you're talking about is the existing parts that you already have in hand, which is like 9900K and all that, right? Yeah,
and I'm actually I just ran the benchmark yesterday. I've run MCE on, MCE off, but it's on multi-threaded. The 9900K is pushing over 2000. This is 1928. It's not a huge difference either way. I don't know which way he ran it or she. Let's find out who it is. This is Ivan Martinez ran these tests. And then for single-threaded performance in Cinebench 15, i9 9900K, I'm assuming he tested it as well. Fresh test 204. This is the surprising part. It makes me kind of wonder. Ryzen 5 3600 non-high wattage part on an X470, 196.
Looking real good.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah, so
the single thread performance?
Yeah, wow. Full chart is just 3 parts here, so I'm looking at it over Gordon's shoulder. 9900K, you have the 3600, and then you have the Ryzen 7 2700X, and the 3600 outdoes its single core performance for the versus the 2700X.
Yeah. So Ryzen 7 2700X, he got a 176. I can give you our updated numbers, but that's about in line with what I'm seeing out of the 2700X with the fresh OS and fresh drivers, new BIOS and all that stuff. 9900K, he is seeing 204. But 196 versus 204 in single threaded against a 9900K. And I'm seeing a little bit higher, maybe 215. Yeah. 220.
And the price difference between those two parts makes that even more exciting.
550 on the street versus what's it going to go for?
I'm blanking. It's probably, I mean, it's a Ryzen, it's a Ryzen 5 part, so it's in the high 200 probably range.
Let's get the exact price. It's going to be for the 3600. It's going to be no, that can't be right, is it?
I'll double check.
I think it is, though, but that does sound correct. Ryzen 5 3600 will be $199.
Yep. Oh, $199.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, the 2500, I believe it was called. And the Ryzen 5 chips from the second gen were, I think, 250 and 200.
Yeah. 3600, when you go to 95 watt TDP, is 249. Those are both the 6 cores. Wait a minute.
$199.
Is this right? That just seems...
Yep, everyone says $199.
That's just crazy.
That's even more bonkers.
Yeah,
those Ryzen 5 chips have been no joke. I'm real excited to see how these ones, this generation,
so 612 versus 816, and it's pretty damn good.
Well,
right?
but a lot of people are wondering in chat, I mean, should we trust these? You know,
I don't know.
How trusted are these?
Well, I will say this review, and I do believe it is a review by Ivan Martinez from El Chapuzas Informatico. See, I tried Adam. I tried and like somebody.
That's a good one.
Ivan shows pictures of the CPU, and he, to tell you how he blurred it, because I will say, you don't know if you're one of these people who likes to cross that line and leak information. If you run a high-res image of that CPU, there's a good chance whoever gave you that CPU is going to get busted, because they're going to be able to track it to where it came from. He ran pictures of the front and the back of it blurred out. He ran pictures of it in the motherboard blurred out of the CPU itself. Now, if you believe he's making it up completely, I don't know. I've never heard of the site, but Google sort of confines us to our language. I don't know if it's real or not, but I suspect it is. I mean, I can't imagine somebody wanting to go out. If I were the kind of person that was going to go out and leak information, if I were going to completely fabricate it, I would just not do that, because who's ever going to believe you again, right?
Well, and our friend from WCCF Tech, Keith, in the chat. Hi, Keith.
Oh, hey, Keith.
Friend of the show. He says, you could always just go back and look at the person's previous reviews just to see their track record.
Well, Keith, that would require doing homework.
And learning Spanish.
You think we're the kind of people who do homework? Yeah, that would really. I mean, yeah, I think it's probably real. I think there's a good chance. It's like a 75% chance is pretty spot on, right? Because you always wonder, but Keith is right. If the person has, especially, and I would tell you, or after doing this for 20 years, you'd come up to major CPU launches, and I swear to God, a week and a half or a week before, Anand, the man himself, would hey. He would just he's having a review, right? And you'd go to cry to AMD or Intel or NVIDIA, and you'd say, "What's up with this?" Anand had his review. We're like, "We don't know. Partners gave it to him." You don't know who gave it to him. Well, because it's Anand and who he was in the industry, there's nothing you can do about it, right? And actually, at a certain point, you used to get angry because they steal all your thunder. But then at a certain point, it's like, oh, actually, as a reviewer, I like having this early preview because I trusted Anand. He knew what he was doing. I knew he had the parts. He had the sources for it. And at the end, he wasn't wrong. So it was I know what to expect. It sort of helps me form an opinion, because sometimes you don't know when you get these parts.
It's good to have sanity check.
It's good to have sanity check. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at a text message.
Breaking
and-
news.
and-
That's people always get bent out of shape. If you look in forums, they don't quite understand the purpose of reviewer guides from Intel and AMD and NVIDIA. They're like, oh, they're telling you what benchmarks to run and stuff like that. That's not the case. that's them saying we use these hardware configurations. These are the results that we got. So it's like a sanity check for you. So what Gordon's saying about Nond is just an independent version of that, basically.
Yeah. And it's just good to have one more thing. I mean, there are hardware reviewers. We all know them that don't like to look at anything else before they write the review. They don't want to think like Dark Phoenix. They don't want to think Dark Phoenix sucked. I don't want to read 2 reviews hearing that. It's like, you can watch Dark Phoenix. You could tell you like, oh, nobody's in that theater for a reason, right? Sorry. But I have high confidence this is probably real. I don't think this person's going to go that far out on a limb.
We got a couple questions from the chat. The first one being, what can Intel do if this is true? What does this mean for Intel?
Well, there were rumors.
Are they dead?
There are rumors. I have not asked them, so it's a little unfair. But I will say there are rumors that they are going to do a price cut on their existing parts.
And that came from DigiTimes, which gets dumped on because they always their iPhone rumors turn out to be bunk, but when it comes to the PC supply chain, they tend to be pretty accurate, actually.
Yeah, and DigiTimes on pricing usually spot on, especially for PC components. So I think there's a good chance they're going to cut prices.
Huh. And so where would that put between the ones on the chart? Like how much closer does it get?
I don't know, I mean...
Wait,
I'm not good at math.
What do you mean by closer?
Well, I mean, if they're going to drop prices, say, 10%?
Oh, you're talking about his money chart?
Comparable. Yeah, well, not even just the money chart. the chart from the review, the one that was
we never showed the money
enough.
chart, did we?
Oh, your prediction on the money thing?
Oh, that was the money. Did we ever? We never even showed that money chart. But I don't
know.
I have to look at that now to see whether... So somebody talks, so let me find it and send it
But
to
the
Adam.
thing is that even if they drop the price, it's not going to change performance. It's just going to change the potential value proposition.
Yeah, well, which is where AMD tries to play, right? They're trying to play in that value prop for a while, but now they're catching up in performance, and it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So even if Intel drops the prices, that's not going to change the core count on their chips.
Yeah, it won't.
So, depending on your use case, it might make it a little more attractive, but it might not necessarily push you over.
True.
Oh,
but with that, the history of Intel behind it, or in some cases, like I really like QuickSync,
that's
things like that. So
it's gonna be crazy if that turns out to be true and they do drop prices, because Intel's like Nvidia. They don't drop prices.
Right.
Like if you go and try and buy an 8700K right now, it's still going to be the same price that it was when it was new.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Any price discounts are from the retailers who are selling them, not because of Intel.
Yeah, and I mean, the rumors are 15% price cut, right?
Yep.
I'm going to imagine sort of across the board, but I don't think that's going to be enough. In some ways,
I don't think so, because my first reaction to that, and admittedly I live in a high cost of living state, but I was like, oh, so that covers my sales tax.
Yeah, I was about to think that too, because here it's 12%? Is that
no, it's
10%?
like more like 10%.
Okay, yeah.
But even still, I mean, that leaves you with like a 5% discount, which is, I mean, it's still a 5% discount, but it's not as exciting as something, larger.
So Zach is wondering, maybe a little too prematurely, when do we think prices for Ryzen 3000 SKUs would drop? Like traditionally in the past, like Ryzen has dropped a little bit over time. Like when does that curve usually happen?
I mean, are we talking about in terms of sanctioned by AMD or from the retailers just promoting the products?
I mean, AMD probably wouldn't do it, would they? Like it'd probably have to be retailers.
The first 2 generations, you start to see some major discounts start to show up around Black Friday. Mm-hmm. Like they've run some crazy CPU promotions. If they're still looking to get market share, I'd expect to see that again.
Yep.
But what's a little bit different this year is that the previous 2 generations of Ryzen launched in the spring, and now this is going to be solidly summer when this one's launched.
Right, so that's influencing, or could influence rather, how much of a discount we see at Black Friday, because they won't have been in the market for as long.
I don't think, though, I don't think AMD is playing the price wars this time. I know they like market shares. They're priced very reasonably for the performance you're going to get.
Yeah.
I think they're also priced so that they're just out of reach for Intel to come down and fight with them. Because $500 for the 8-core 860 or the 1224 part what's Intel going to really bring their prices down? There really isn't much Intel can do to mess with that part on pricing.
No,
I don't
true.
think they want to go that far down. Intel doesn't want to devalue, their brand in a lot of ways because, the old saying is you can't raise prices. You can lower them, but you can't raise them.
And NVIDIA has been raising prices.
Yeah, and they've been raising prices. And see how, that's probably been a lot of the resistance to it. So Intel may keep prices high because they just sort of think, well, realistically, we still own, 70% of the market for, even on desktop, probably more than that.
Yep.
Although on enthusiasts, it's arguably a lot less these days.
Something I find interesting that I haven't really seen talk about much about these new AMD parts is that AMD actually did raise prices this generation too. If you go back and look at the 7 series second gen, they launched at 330 and 300.
Yeah.
Whereas this time around, the cheap one, I believe, is 330. So
Yeah.
Yeah, 330 gets you the 816, so Ryzen 7 3700X, single CCD, CCI, I forget what it is, but 816 4436 base for 329, and it's if that that according to that website, the Ryzen 5 3600 walks all over the 2700X basically.
Yeah. The thing is, I noticed something similar, Brad, but I feel like, unlike with NVIDIA, they arranged their stack of chips in a way that doesn't feel bad, right? So it makes sense that they have a part that's comparable to that same price point on the Intel side. And even though that's a different spot in the stack than it used to be, it doesn't feel bad because you still have the familiar points that you would expect.
I wholeheartedly agree, actually. Everyone's like, wow, you can get a 12-core chip for $500. Not, wow, you can get the high-end GeForce for $1,200.
Yeah.
True.
I'm just still trying to square that Cinebench 15, that's single-threaded, because 196 is by the spec. It's a 4.2 boost. Say maybe building a 100, 200 megahertz for the XFR stuff. So maybe 4.4 versus basically single-threaded, a 9800K is usually 5 gigahertz, 4.9, right? At least. But 204 versus 196 is just sort of that is just
What?
that's a what? And the 2700X is 176, which is what I'm pretty similar to what I'm seeing. So that is a very, very decent score for
It's exciting.
for a part down at 4.4.
It's exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's exciting, but exciting in a way that as a not risk averse, but it's conservative type personality, I would like to see the numbers for myself on
of
a
course.
machine. And I'm not saying that no one else does, but for me to feel fully excited, I always need to feel like there's firsthand experience with it.
And I would argue that is one of the problems with leaks is because you have good leaks that are legitimately close to what the final parts are going to be, and then there's these wild, crazy ones that get expectations out of the ballpark.
Yeah.
And people expect 16-core Ryzen, $229, right? Then you're like, oh, that's insane. Yeah,
That
it
would
is
be
insane.
amazing.
You're not
5 gigahertz.
It's so insane. It's
All
not
cores.
real.
Yeah. But what if it was?
Seriously.
So.
Wait, Brad was going to say something.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I forget what I was going to say.
Sorry, put you right on the spot.
So talk about leaks and all this stuff is fine and well, but we have people in the chat asking when can we expect our reviews of the Ryzen stuff, and that's just kind of a softball to talk about what's going on at 7.7.
Oh, so I honestly can't. I don't even know when. Can't say anyway. Even if I did, I don't know. And even if I did know, I couldn't say. But I'm gonna guess if the CPUs are on 7.7, you'll probably see everything then. Makes sense.
Isn't it weird that it's launching on a Sunday,
Yeah.
especially after a long American weekend?
Yeah, that actually is Adam trying to get me to bring out my reasons, because this has been a big discussion here. I'm sure it's a discussion at every single person reviewing any of the new parts from AMD. Is launch of July 7th at whatever 9 a.m. Eastern is basically a Sunday of the 4th of July weekend.
It's a long weekend for us this year.
For people
Yeah.
not in the United States, it's a 4-day weekend. Everybody's at the lake in their speedboat, drinking Budweiser. It's not
Cooking hot
I'll
dogs.
be camping. I'll be
cooking hot
camping.
dogs. Yeah, or you're camping like Brad. So it is really, it is an it's really a head scratcher. One, it makes it really stressful for anybody trying to review hardware. And I think it's sort of like, it seems like you want the largest market in the world for that, with the money in the US to sort of launch with the part. Sort of like everybody wake up, you see the parts, everybody gets excited, but it's actually the day before. That works for everybody else, everywhere else in the world, but in the United States, it seems odd to want to leave out a pretty, decently large country in this. So, and it makes it hard on us. Oh, so you
have a theory, right?
So I will say normally, let's go back, because I know everybody likes to make up crazy theories about Intel or NVIDIA because, villains and all this. They're not villains, but everybody wants them to be the villain in this. If Intel says, hey, we're doing that 9900KS part, you're going to get the sample right before the 4th of July, and the reviews embargo lifts on July 7th, a Sunday. You're like, what? This obviously, so everybody, I will tell you exactly what everybody will do, even though it has no bearing on anything. Everybody will go to their jump to conclusion mat and say, you're launching on this bad day because you want to hide this part. You think it's not going to be good. Right?
I mean, they would say that for NVIDIA as well, probably.
They would say the same thing for NVIDIA. If there were a 2090 Ti super fragilistic and you launched it on, I'm like, we're going to launch it Christmas Eve, right? What? This is Christmas Eve. You would think, because you always announce bad news before the weekend. That's why most governments
on a Friday.
Governments before big holidays, because you want to bury it in the news cycle. You don't want anybody to know about it, right? That's what everybody would say. This is crazy, right? You give reviewers not enough time to review the parts, so they have to make snap judgments to make the embargo on that Sunday. So that's what everybody would say. And that actually is that's what everybody would say, right? But you know what? Is there anything here that would indicate that AMD wants to hide performance on the new parts? Ryzen 9, Ryzen 7. Not a Geekbench, not a Cinebench, not anything that's leaking. So I honestly don't think, which the normal logical conclusion is, you want to bury this part, make people not pay attention to it, is they don't care. It's like, because your AMD is like, it's so good, we don't care. What are you going to do?
Well, but if they didn't care, they could have done it a different weekend.
I mean, they don't care because it's like, you know what? They know how strong this part is. They know how good this part is.
Sorry, I was having trouble following you. So I think what you're saying,
I'm saying is they don't care. It's
right.
Like,
so you're saying
we know
is
it's
that
so good. They know it's so good.
They can launch on a Sunday and it'll basically sell
after
itself
a 4-day long weekend,
right? Because this is exact a conversation we had. It's like July 7th, because we
had this conversation yesterday.
In the announcement, Lisa Su said 7 first 7 nanometer desktop part on July on 7th, 777, right?
Right.
Which is good luck if you're in Vegas, but and I think a lot of people say, well, that's really, you're going to move it to Sunday just for that, just for the symbolism of that. A lot of people want that momentum of getting a big launch just to push things along, but they don't need the big momentum on this part. I really think they are so confident that these parts are going to be look at these leaks. They're crazy, right? They're so confident, I think, that they don't care. It is worth the symbolism of that date because they know this part is not going to lose.
It's worth, the symbolism of that date and the undying, maybe not bitterness, but maybe mild resentment of tech reviewers to lose out on their long weekend.
See, this is the thing, though. It's not just tech reviewers. Like, all the people at AMD are going to be all hands on deck through that weekend as well. Like, why would they force their workers
just say, we'll
to
answer it on Monday. We'll answer that on Monday. We don't know.
I think it's a little different for them because it's when you're launching a product, you're so excited for it that you probably wouldn't see it as, an obligation.
Oh, but still, like, to be like, oh, hey, listen, we got this big part shipping. You don't get to take a long weekend. You're going to have to do everything up till the last minute.
I'm sure they're going to be, they've got everything set. So it's more of like just being on call, monitoring to make sure nothing, goes up in flames. It's not going to be something like, I'm sorry, Mommy can't play with you because I have to be in an office for 4 days.
I don't know. Well,
I just think it's that, I think it's any part of big projects. They didn't hey, we can't launch Apollo 11 on Sunday because that's it's just really, you go for it. Like, we got to hit this. That's the moonshot. You make it that day, right? Everybody works up to that point. I think it's like movie launches, moonshot launches. big product launches, you just go with it. Everybody sort of, it's part of it. Yeah, you're right. And reviewers will be bitter, but it doesn't matter. I will say after having many, many weekends and holidays and all kinds of things wrecked in my life over the years by hardware reviews, you just deal with it. It's just the way the game is. So nobody holds any, you never hold it against the product.
Do we want to say, our coverage plans at all are going to get affected by this?
We'll see what we can do. I mean, I think we'll try to hit whatever date it is, but it will be tough, so we'll see, right? Because it's a little, I don't know.
It's hard.
Because I don't know what we can talk about, when we can talk about it, but I think we'll get something out. So, come back. We'll talk about it definitely on Monday, because that's in the United States.
And then, the full nerd on Tuesday afterwards.
Is it Tuesday or Monday?
Oh, I think we'll do a full nerd on Tuesday, but we'll have something on Monday for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not coming in on Sunday.
Wait, so you guys all buy my theory? I'm just was kind of wondering
that they're just okay with it.
No, that they got so much swagger. Whatever. They're just going to drop that part. Right? I just think.
I think I'm still
they don't need that boost. They don't
the part where I thought you were going to say something super outlandish, and so this is so reasonable that I don't really have a strong opinion.
Come on, you know how the internet wheels turn. If you had taken any vendor that people don't like, and you had them do a short launch period right?
I totally understand where you're coming from.
Everybody says that.
But all I have to say is yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Right, but it actually makes sense because, there's nothing, we'll see, right? You got to wait for reviews, but I don't think it's going to be that way. If it were, it'd be interesting because it actually is a better story for us in the media, but I don't think it's going to be that way. I really do believe this is just it's worth it. We don't need that lift. We're so confident.
I agree with you. They've proven themselves in the past 2 generations that they're improving every time. So now they've kind of set the expectation where if they say it's going to be better yet again this time, people are going to believe them.
Right.
Or more likely to, at least.
I just hope people remember this because if NVIDIA or Intel do a launch, it's a short period on a weekend, and you see those stories, because you will see those stories and videos where people say, they just did this launch because they want to hide it, cover it up, right? You got to give it the same treatment. You got to treat the part for what it is, not how it was introduced.
True.
Right.
So
the shortest turnaround I've had on a graphics card review is I got a graphics card express delivered to me at 5 o'clock at night ahead of a 9 o'clock a.m. in the morning embargo date.
Jerks. One of the last questions from the chat was regarding the leaked review, or whatever, the early review, is that it was on a 470 board and not a 570 board, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Does that matter? Also, then we get to talk about 570.
Well, I'm assuming they updated the BIOS. If 470 has support for it, AMD has sworn up and down it doesn't make any difference in performance 470 to 570. And if they ran all the benchmarks correctly, and I'm going to give that benefit of the doubt, then no, it's not going to matter.
Shouldn't matter. Okay.
The only issue, I think, is driver support for that new clock ramping feature they have, where the chip goes from basically a low power mode to full power mode. They cut the latency from 15 I'm going off memory here, 50 nanoseconds to 5 nanoseconds. So it's very decent. Actually, probably milliseconds, but it's a very big improvement for the clock ramping feature. If that's not enabled, I don't know how much that affects performance.
All right.
If it does make a difference, it would presumably only get better.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better, right? So hopefully, you assume that, but it doesn't. Life doesn't always work that way when you assume it. So,
all right.
You did want to talk about what now?
Let's talk about X570.
Well, bam! I'm going to do it. I think I can do this. I got a text message. I think we're okay.
So we showed the box, so that's already a thing.
Well, what is in this box?
Can we do anything more with this box? Can I flip it over?
I think we are going to flip this up. You want to do it?
It's a box of what?
Am I actually unboxing this?
Who made it?
Flip it?
Who made it? What is it?
Hold on,
we're just going to show it off.
We're just going to show this box. Here we go.
It's an MSI Meg X570 Ace board, which I think is one of their mid-range boards.
Nice.
How much is this one?
God, I don't have my notebook in front of me.
So, because mid-range now, when it comes to X570.
Well, yeah, with X570 mid-range, I'm going to guess it's probably in the 3-ish range. Ooh. I mean, the range of X570 boards that I've seen from 2 different vendors now ranges from $700 down to $180-ish.
Yeah.
So I think there are options that are there for on the sort of lower end, but traditionally on that very low end, board, with X370, X470, it would have been more like $100, right? You're probably a little more up to speed on this than I am. So with X570, the lowest end boards really hover in the $180 to $200 range. They're kind of stripped, but so the reasons I've been given are, obviously the cost. PCIe 4 is you need a higher quality board. You need these better trace layouts. You need to you need these redrivers. You need to maintain this integrity. It's just pricier in general than X470 to implement. The chipset's a little more expensive as well, but also there's tariffs that are a factor as well. So people are sort of the tariffs have actually increased the prices of boards, so it's all sort of built into it. And unless it changes, like they move their production somewhere else, it's probably going to maintain there.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And I'm not sure if it's been confirmed or whatnot, but I've noticed that a lot of the boards have fans on them too, and people say that because PCIe 4, you need more robust cooling systems as well.
Yeah, because we may have talked about it already, but I know Brad's not into the unboxing, but I just want to break it out so people can see the motherboard itself.
I don't mind unboxing a nice looking motherboard like that though.
It has LEDs,
nice, gold accents.
Because remember
so pretty.
The PCH, I'm calling PCH, it's a Southbridge, technically, I guess, if you go by the non-Intel nomenclature. The PCIe chip in the Southbridge is basically the I/O die from the CPU. So it's about, I've heard ranges from 11 to 15 to 16 watts under load. Definitely, you have to keep it cool to maintain performance. PCIe 4 does use more power, but it's actually, and I think the price Steve gave, X570, he said $40, which seems like, wow, that's a lot for a chipset. And it's funny, I was looking at actually older chipsets, and the X58 chipset for the original Nehalem Core i7 was $74.
Oh, yeah.
So
40 is not that bad.
No, 40 is not that bad relatively, but overall, it's going to be pricier. I think it's interesting you have this very high-end range. These boards are realistically pushing up to $600 to $700, and they're just adding all these features, which, good sign for AMD, which you never would have seen before, because I'm sure from the motherboard point of view, we really don't think people are going to put a $200 CPU into a $600 motherboard, kind of that. But, you're putting a $700 CPU into a $700 motherboard, that probably makes
more sense
to some people who want to spend that much money for extra features.
Yep.
No Thunderbolt 3 on this board, as we know.
Oh, yes. Somebody just asked that. Also, Peter's asking, how well do we think DDR4 can be overclocked on a X470 compared to X570? And also, how will it impact the topology on one DIMM per channel and the daisy chain on 2 DIMMs per channel?
I unfortunately can't remember that. They did talk about how far you can push these parts. I don't have the notes from in front of me from Editor's Day, but you are getting very, very high clocks. They actually have decoupled how the DDR is connected to the memory, so it's not as reliant on having high DDR clocks. But I mean, Computex, everybody was like, I think somebody was saying, I think MSI was even saying into the 5,000 range. So very high 4.7, high 5. So the memory controller, you can just push really, really high memory clocks, which you couldn't really with Ryzen second gen, is what I understand from Computex and as well from the AMD Editor's Day. So that is public information. So they definitely runs very decently.
Also, friend of the show, Zach's asking, how about the NVMe PCIe 4 SSD, one that just went up, for sale today? Are they worth it on X570? Do you think it's worth it?
You wouldn't know until you test them.
Yeah. Which SSD was it?
It was the Corsair one went up today.
They're basically all the Phison controllers. Corsair did intimate to me that at Computex, like, we're gonna, we have leadership in NAND. We've got tons of stuff. We've got the expertise. Their feeling is, of all these PCIe 4 SSDs that are going to be out there, they are going to be the ones mostly in people's faces.
Nice.
So they're going to have a lot of amount. Is it worth it? I don't know. I saw crystal benchmarks from Computex that look good. 5 write, 4.7 read? No, 5 write, 4.7 read. I forget that backwards, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I will mention one thing that was interesting. You have to remember, even though you have in the Southbridge here, you have PCIe 4 that basically runs a lot of the hardware here. a lot of the boards, the M.2 slot, so you have like, this one has 3. If you have 3 of those, 2 of them will probably come off the South Bridge, right? Off the PCIe 4 controller. The other one will go directly to the CPU because the CPU has, remember, the dedicated 4 PCIe 4 gen lanes. They can go to wherever they want, but which slot you're going to want to be in the one that goes to the CPU, obviously, for probably the best performance, because then you're not squeezing through those shared lanes going to the CPU.
Right.
And certain board makers have put them in different locations for reasons. MSI told me most of their boards, the PCIe 4 controllers up here, PCIe that's directly to the CPU, and then some of their higher end ones, they actually put it at the bottom because they really think that if you're going to buy one of these super expensive SSDs, you're going to want it away from the GPU. Away from the heat, so it's actually sort of like the top one, and for a lot of them will be PCIe 4.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. You're thinking about that. Yeah.
And then some of them will be in the bottom. So, but you definitely want to read the manual. Hopefully, they actually tell you that. I will say, actually, you know what was interesting? Just going through the manual, there's no Thunderbolt 3, but I didn't realize some of the USB ports can change configuration depending on which. Some of the USB ports can change depending on which CPUs you put in them, which is kind of interesting because some of the parts have USB Gen 2. Some of them don't, I guess.
Cool.
Interesting.
I think one thing, looking at that, one thing it just makes me think of that I find interesting is if you remember all the way back at the first Ryzen launch, like motherboards were super slow to come out. They were basically rehashes of Intel boards. They were buggy. ITX took forever. Two generations later, man, I mean, like they're actually like, these are real nice high-end boards coming out specifically to support Ryzen and PCIe 4 and stuff.
Yep.
And I think just the motherboard support says a lot about how far AMD's come in just a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, there were 7 for the original launch, and that was a rolling launch, right? They were just kind of there were new BIOS updates every other day. So they've really matured in that time.
It's a really great sign. The one thing I am curious about is how well it'll be embraced by actual consumers because, I mean, AMD positioned itself as more of a budget-friendly brand. And so for X570, which, admittedly isn't more of an enthusiast chipset type board to begin with, but even still, I just wonder how many people are going to stick with X470 because they just can't justify to themselves that they're going to spend that much more money for a motherboard that they won't be using all the features of yet because they're more budget-minded to begin with.
I think that's one thing they are doing is X470 is going to live sort of like X470 basically is your cheap version of X570. It's your high-end chipset. You just don't get PCIe 4, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, if you're looking at buying the Ryzen 5 3600 for $200, you pick up a $130 X470 board. Were you really going to go out and buy a $2,000 PCIe 4 SSD to go with it? Probably not.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that's I think that's part of the strategy with it.
Maybe this is the pessimist in me. I would just hate for, motherboard makers to support this so strongly and then, them not actually getting a return on that, investment because people decide to play it much more budget minded.
Yeah. No.
I wouldn't be surprised if, we see a lot of enthusiast adoption of Ryzen 3000 series and X570 because it is something new. It is PCIe 4. I wouldn't be surprised with all that. Like, if you're budget-minded to begin with, I think the B350, 450, 550 line always makes a lot more sense for the majority of people anyway. And those ones shouldn't be as expensive because it doesn't have PCIe 4, I don't believe. Right.
It's just more of, the Ryzen 5 3600, that is going to be in that area where a lot of people are going to gravitate towards. And I feel like more people are excited about that just from the buzz I've been kind of, picking up on. And so I feel like in that particular area, it's not, bottom barrel budget, but it's still more budget minded. And so I can't quite see that group of people going for the X570 type boards.
Yeah.
We have somebody who said, I missed who said it. Somebody's asking why are we talking? Oh, Flash Photo, friend of the show, Flash Photo. Why are we talking about PCIe 4? We have PCIe 6 coming.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Just got announced.
Never knew PCIe 5.
So to wrap up this segment so we can get to questions before we get out of here, Blue Kid is asking if we can get a cliff notes of what is new on these boards and why should we replace second gen boards. why should if we
PCIe 4.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
and Thunderbolt 3 on some of them.
Yeah,
on
one of them.
And also, Gordon, weren't you saying the whole the driver support for the?
I think that should be supported in X470. It's for the clock ramping feature, the faster clock ramping. It's in the Ryzen 3000s. It's just a new chipset driver. I imagine it'll also be enabled on X470. It's mostly for PCIe 4. And again, if you don't need a PCIe 4 GPU, most people are not going to, and you don't plan on buying a PCIe 4 SSD in the meantime, that does not make those old boards irrelevant. It doesn't make anything old irrelevant. They're still great parts. So.
Oh, sorry. One last thing. Whiskey Omega is saying that we should mention X590. What's up with that? Is that real?
I saw there was some rumor there was X590. I think Steve over at Gamers Nexus addressed this in a video on his channel. He basically said, from talking around, X590 was a very early consideration for what they were going to call X570. So X590 would have been probably a PCIe 4 chipset, right? So X590 higher end. And then possibly, I'm guessing they maybe thought like maybe we can just rebrand X470. So we rev the boards, you get a spin out of it, you do X570 with PCIe 3, X590 PCIe 4. At some point they said, let's just not even do that. Everybody just went in on PCIe 4, it seems like. I mean, again, there were 40 motherboards supposedly at Computex. Okay. So it's a big launch. Yeah. Plenty of boards. I think the motherboard vendors realized they didn't want to try to market a X570 because people are probably not going to want to. If you want that performance thing, you want X570, Their newest and greatest and latest and greatest.
Okay, let's switch over to some questions. If you have some questions, we have a whole question channel on the Full Nerd Discord that you can just throw it in there at any time. We'll hold it on till the next episode, and we've been doing that for the past couple weeks. But first, I've got a couple questions from the YouTube chat. Yes?
Why don't we get to that email question? Because that one we've been holding for a long time.
Email question first, then.
This is from Matthew Harris. Look, I got your name right.
Nice.
Like some folks. Hi, folks. Love your show. I love fast new PCs, but hate the fact that Windows bloat and constant updates can make even the fastest PC slow and frustrating to use. Are there any meaningful alternatives out there you can recommend, or should I try and tweak my Windows settings to improve the experience?
I think everyone's in the chat's going to yell Linux.
Yeah.
There actually are some Linux distributions that are made specifically to have a very small footprint to run on older, like if you have an old desktop, the idea is you can take this, install it on it, it's super low overhead. That would work great if you're, interested in pure speed and you can do what you need to do on Linux, which not everyone can do. But on Windows, I mean, I think every time you get a major feature update, Windows tries to reinstall Candy Crush and shit like that, or stuff like that. You just got to get rid of it. But you can go into the Task Manager and there's a Startup tab in Task Manager, and whenever I see people saying that Windows is too slow, it's because every program you install tries to make it so it launches on startup. So if you go into that Startup tab in Task Manager and just start banhammering everything like Steam, if you have Steam starting on Windows boot, that'll really slow down your boot times. So I disable it so that Steam only opens when I want it to, and it saves me a lot of time. So I'd recommend just off the bat going in there and doing that, or looking for something like Puppy Linux if you've already done all that.
Cool. All right. But the answer is not a Mac, right?
I do have a question from William Strom, Bill Strom.
He's just going to go over that. Yeah, go for it.
NVIDIA GeForce web drivers are typically identified for NVIDIA's Fermi, Kepler, Maxwell, and Pascal architectures as and blah, 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 blah. Apple has refused to authorize NVIDIA web drivers for its latest Mojave OS, but all those drivers still work for High Sierra and earlier operating systems. Where does that leave NVIDIA web drivers for the Turing architecture, such as the new NVIDIA GTX 1660 Ti graphics cards?
Didn't we answer this one already?
Did we?
I feel like we did.
Oh, I think the answer was get a PC.
Get a PC.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think we talked about this. All right. Savio is asking, did we hear about John Sell joining Intel? Also, we'll mention Frank Azor from Alienware has moved over to AMD as well. So
supposedly, we haven't gotten confirmation on that yet.
Supposedly.
Yeah, we actually did an article. Mark Hochman did an article about John Sell joining Intel. He's worked at all the big chip companies you can think of. Most recently, he was one of the chief Xbox chip architects, and he joined Intel to focus specifically on security underneath Raja Koduri. So
yeah,
that's
we
another
report to
big
Raja.
hire from them.
Yeah. Is he a public-facing kind of guy?
To as big a degree as like you would think of if you think of like Jim Keller, Raja Koduri, but Jim Sell is someone who goes around and gets interviewed a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
He's going to be specifically. I was reading an interview with VentureBeat just this morning, actually. He's going to be heading up their system security, their chip security, which in the wake of Spectre and Meltdown and everything is a big focus over at Intel. So they hired him to be their security guy.
Nice. Friend of the show, Rusty's asking, which Zen 2 CPU are y'all looking forward to reviewing the most?
Probably the 16 core later on. I mean, that's 750 high end, but I think
What about of this launch?
of this launch, the 12 core. I always kind of like the big ones, right? Because it'll be interesting to see if that part can. Honestly, I'm actually interested in reviewing all of them. I do think they have, obviously a better multi-threaded value. They're probably going to win there. Single-threaded, I'm interested to see if these leaked rumors come out. And then the other really big issue I wonder is if they close the gaming gap, that 20% gaming difference with very fast GPUs, as somebody was wanting to complain to me about, at lower resolutions, at non-GPU bound things. So if you're running 2080 Ti's at 1080p, I don't know, 240 hertz panel, is it still going to be 20% slower than typical Intel? So I'm very interested to see if they've closed the gap to where it doesn't make any difference. So as I've said before, that to me is the most significant thing of this launch, other than awesome amounts of multi-threaded performance.
I 100% agree, and for that reason, I'm actually most intrigued to see Ryzen 5 series chips and how they perform, because that is the bang for buck mainstream one, and if they manage to close that bang for buck mainstream gaming gap, that's going to be a really good part.
Yep. Total agreement with you, Brad.
Who is it? Peter, friend of the show. Peter's asking, which CPU would we buy with our own money?
I have an 1800X in my system right now. If I can get a BIOS update for my motherboard, I'm actually considering buying the 8-core version. So the 3700X, I think it is. Of course, I'm going to wait for reviews. I'm going to wait to see how everything falls out. But I feel like the second-gen chips were a big jump over first-gen chips with the way they handled smart clock ramping and whatnot. And it seems like this one's just going to push it even further. So I'm considering actually buying a 3800X to replace my 1800X, depending how reviews go.
Wait, would you get the 3700X or the 3800X? There's actually two in
The
that.
more expensive one.
Okay.
The higher clock one.
Okay.
Yeah.
To tack on, does anyone else say what they would get?
It's hard.
It's really hard. I'd probably do the 3700X just for the money. I mean, I would really like the 3900X with 12 cores of this, but I probably can't justify that for what I've been doing these days. So
I think I would probably go with a 3700X, or, I mean, depends what my budget is, right? So if I was feeling a little more loose with the wallet, I would do that, or I would actually try one of the Ryzen 5 parts, because it's like, I mean, I had a 2500K for years, and that thing served me so well. And it, now if I got something that was like 6 cores, 12 threads, and still had really great gaming performance, like the supposed, exclusive review, like, why not?
Yeah, if I was building a new PC from scratch and they do close the gaming gap, et cetera, everything we're talking about, I think I would be most inclined to get a Ryzen 5 chip.
yeah, for most people that's more than that's plenty, right? The 3600, 65 watts.
To tack on to the top of that, the Cobra is asking, do we really need 16 cores, or would you rather have? Okay, here we go. Would you rather have 16 cores or 8 cores with higher clocks? Each of us.
I think logically you would get more out of 8-core higher clock. I mean, that's why as much as people complain about 9900K, it's a butt kicking part because of that high clock. More cores is nice for those few times you use it. But yeah, generally high clock is better for most people. I just like the idea, like, if you like, you like a V8 because you like a V8, you like that torque. It's nice. You never use it except sitting in traffic. So what's the point?
I would agree with that for most people as my advice, but for me personally, I actually might go with more cores just because I do less gaming on PC and I actually do a little bit more like video clip making type stuff for all my dance things. So having more cores would help.
I'll keep this just as neutral. I don't have a preference, but something I've said on recent shows that I really agree with. I'm really happy that Ryzen has come up and has all these cores and Intel's fighting back with single thread performance because I love having options. Depending on what you do, I mean, you can get that kick-ass high clock 8-core thing. Or if you need all those cores, you can just go get all those cores from AMD now. And I love that there are options available now.
Yeah, competition is good. It makes everybody work harder. And it ultimately for consumers is better.
Gives you more choices. Better choices.
Yeah, I would prefer 8 cores with higher clocks, personally.
900K then, Adam?
A lot of people keep asking that question. Is the 900K still relevant? I think we'll answer that once we have final reviews out. So
Yeah.
To get to some of the questions on Discord, Alan is asking, why can't all video cards be bus powered? It's quite a hassle to deal with power cords if you have a bunch of high-end GPUs.
Because you can only get so much power through the motherboard. Like, it's only rated for so much. They could go... Apple just actually introduced some crazy custom proprietary ultra high-powered PCIe slot for the new Mac Pro. But, I mean, unless the PCIe group manages to wrest that out of their hands, I mean, I don't see that coming to PC anytime soon. You're just going to have power cords because you need to get the power to the GPU, and the motherboards can't supply it through the PCIe slot.
Yeah.
They remember there was the big deal when the RX 480 came out because it turned out it was drawing too much power through the PCIe slot above rating. So there's a big brouhaha over that. So
can PCIe 4 provide more power, or is it still capped?
I think it's still 75 watts through the slot. I don't think they increased the actual power delivery.
Oh,
yeah, they didn't.
Okay. Interesting. Big Mom, a friend of the show, Big Mom is asking, are we going to add 9900KS to the Ryzen 3000 review? Meaning, are we going to add that into the testing? Also, can you test the 3900X in an average B450 board to let others see if it's stable for stock usage?
Yeah, I don't. I'll have to look to see if I have a B450 board. I don't know if I'd have time to do that.
That's the tricky part. That's always the tricky part.
Yeah.
You never have enough time to do all the stuff you want to do.
Yeah, and then also it seems a little bit, I mean, would you really be putting a 3900X into a whatever $80 motherboard? I mean, it's sort of one of those things where I think generally people want
B450, like I was saying to Elena, B450, I think the X50 lineup from AMD is the sweet spot unless you want to run multiple GPUs or PCIe 4. So I can understand why people would take a 39 or 3700X or whatever one you're talking about and put it in the B450.
Yeah,
we have a lot of people in the chat saying that it would be interesting to see a B450 board.
I imagine it's not going to not work, right? So 3700X, 3600X, I don't think there are any issues. 3800X should be fine too. These are 7 nanometer parts. The power consumption of them looks pretty awesome. They've been touting awesome. So power is not an issue. I don't imagine any of them would really have any stability issues.
Well, they're asking about the 12-core part, the 3900X.
Yeah, I imagine that would work too.
I don't have these part numbers down pat yet.
Yeah, there
are many this time.
Yeah, it's a 105 watt TDP part. If you could run an 1800X and a B450, yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to run a 3900X. So
and for the Intel part, I think that's not coming out till fall, right? The 9900KS.
Yeah. Yeah, so and it'll be a different world by then, right? We'll see. Because it's going to be, by this fall, 3950X, the 16-core part will be out.
Yep.
So we'll see.
We got kind of a in the weeds one that I got some clarification on from Doug Parker. He said, will physical unclonable functions ever be a key part of gaming? And I asked him for a little more context on what that. He said all random numbers are really pseudo-random. So if an unclonable function can be created that reports a random yes/no bit in the computer's innards, then can using that more random number create a game whose function is better because it's more truly random?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Wasn't there...
That seems extremely theoretical. I agree with Gordon. I have no idea, but it seems like pseudo-random number versus true random number can be a very important in cryptography and stuff. My guess would be in gaming, it's functionally equivalent at this point. That's just me talking out of my ass off the top of my head, though. So,
I think basically we're expressing that everyone is disappointed by random number generators in games.
Yes, yeah.
They rely on them so much, and it's just always seems... It's like a Las Vegas casino where you always lose. It never is like you win. You win 1 out of 100 times.
And that's why when you're playing like Baldur's Gate or whatever, you just keep re-rolling until you get the stats you want.
Yeah, and I think there have been hardware... I mean, random number generators have... I have not paid attention to... God, didn't Intel try that years ago? They did some improved random number generator and people got angry. But no, wait. No, that was a processor ID. That was it.
We got a kind of a long one from a generally new listener, watcher. Glad to have you. F2F Tech. Question for Gordon and Brad, a long one. My question is around how well do we think previous generations of NVIDIA GPU architectures will age? We've all seen Kepler drop off considerably since its unbalanced 4 warp schedulers and 192-core SMM design is no longer being tuned and optimized. Do we think Maxwell and Pascal will suffer a similar fate? He goes on further. Yeah.
I would say that those older NVIDIA cards, the bigger issue is that they have less memory than modern game needs than what you were talking about. I think that NVIDIA gets a bum rap about its cards not aging well. I think that NVIDIA's cards, actually, they come out, they're competitive. It doesn't have fine wine because their drivers are actually usually very well optimized on day one for games when they come out. That being said, they do put a lot of work into drivers. Like their DirectX 12 performance improved drastically over the course of the last couple of years, even on the same hardware. Like it was getting whomped in Ashes of Singularity by Radeon cards, and now it's dead heat. I think NVIDIA gets a bum rap. I expect the cards to age just as well as they have been, which I guess like it sounds like you're not happy with Maxwell, but I don't think they are going to suffer any more or less so than any other NVIDIA cards have in the past. And I think that Radeon's fine wine is a result of ongoing optimizations because they're not as fine-tuned on day one as GeForce's game-ready drivers.
That would make a lot of sense.
All right.
That being said, Radeon's been getting real good. I'm not trash-talking Radeon. They've been doing awesome with software, so don't take that as a blow.
But there definitely is, there was a period where they'd even backed off of updating drivers, just update drivers. And they weren't. Yeah. I mean, they had a bad rep for drivers deservedly from years and years ago. Mm-hmm. And if those day one drivers were really bad, they look awesome now because now the drivers are better, right? So that's that perception.
All right, a couple more, then we'll get out of here. Sanders is asking, with the current 3600 review, we see some really bad memory writes in AIDA, and pretty bad latency. Do we think this is still a BIOS problem like it was with X470? And once it gets fixed, do we think it will improve performance?
I don't know if I can talk about that.
Okie doke. We'll move on to the next one. This is kind of a universal thing, but I think I'll ask it again. Zorglub, a friend of the show, Zorglub's asking, are games when will games start using more than 4 cores, 8, 12, 6? You know, we're getting all these cores from AMD. When are we going to start seeing games use more?
We're already starting to see it in open world games. Like if you play like Watch Dogs 2 or a lot of those open world games, they'll scale pretty well. Battlefield 5 does as well. We're starting to see it more and more. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it start to pick up more drastically after the launch of the next console generation because they'll finally have 8-core Ryzen chips in there. So I know it's already taking baby steps in that direction. We're seeing a lot more in open world games. I think once developers are trying to optimize all their games around 8-core Ryzen, which is going to be the next gen console, then we'll start to see support for more cores become more common. So a couple years.
Thanks. Sorry. On the topic of next generation consoles, Blue Kid has a softball for you, Gordon. Let's guess how much the PC market goes up now that PS5 and Next Box are looking very disappointing.
Really? I didn't know. Were there people disappointed with that? Seems like most console people are very happy with it. I do want to add, though, on Brad's question, I think we are sort of at the days where you need 6+ cores at this point for gaming, because I think there's definitely also a disconnect with gaming too, where people rely on the benchmarks. They rely on these sort of like scripted, we're going to run through one section of a game. Mm-hmm. If you actually sit down and play a game sometimes and you just look at the amount of CPU cores being used and spikes, it's actually getting to be fairly impressive. Far Cry 5, I was really kind of blown away on a Core i7 6-core laptop with hyperthreading. It was using a decent amount of threads. So
I would say Division 2. I've been noticing Division 2.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot going on underneath. It really feels like you really should, 4+4, with hyperthreading, still very decent performance, but, feels like 6+ is better these days.
I think 4 with hyperthreading you can get by.
Yeah, I that's the thing. It's like I think people read a little too much into it. It's like, it's like you can't not play with. Suddenly you can't play with a 7700K. No, you can still play. It's going to still be pretty awesome for that person using it, but is it going to be as good as an experience as a 8700K or a 900K or a 2700X? Maybe not in some games.
All right, last question from Renee. Will we get a benchmark that compares the old and new scheduler for AMD?
I don't think I will try if I have time, but again, this is going to be a compressed review schedule. This is going to be something that's going to happen. I will point out that Hardware Unbox, Steve has already done some testing, and he basically says, I ain't seeing it. Also, Jared at PC Gamer says, I ain't seeing nothing either. What's going on? I actually did some testing on a Threadripper 32-core 2990X WX, and I was like, I'm going to get blown away here. And I went from 1809 Windows to 1903. I used two specific things, which I've been told work. One is Firestrike. It was like marginal improvement, 0 almost. I mean, it really wasn't anything. I didn't see it on a Threadripper, which you would assume would get the most out of it because you're looking at, 4 dies. It's not just, And then also 7-zip, which, I've had issues with in the past. A lot of people said it was actually a problem with the scheduler in Windows, all these kinds of blah, blah, blah. I didn't see anything either. I was really just kind of disappointed. I sort of just stopped doing my testing because I didn't have time to go back and retest it, and I thought I have to wait for a new driver. But then I saw Steve and I saw Jared's results, and I was like, I think there is another shoe that must have to be dropped because nobody's seen this big uplift from the scheduler update from 1903 yet.
All right.
Hope that answers it.
No. People want more performance.
I wonder
Gordon.
if it has to come in the chipset updates and the new motherboards.
I don't know. I do wonder, like, maybe there's a BIOS update, maybe there's a driver update that has to be dropped. I was told 1903 has a new scheduler, should be fine, and then the driver is only for the clock ramping feature, but who knows, right? We have to wait a little bit, it feels like.
Yep. Switch to Linux. All right.
That did actually, yes, that is definitely one of those, like, people pointed out the problems with the Windows scheduler if you looked at Linux performance. So
couldn't see that one coming.
All right, let's do it. Let's get out of here.
Oh, yeah, we're done. Sorry. We're
done.
All right, we'll check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on The Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@PCWorld.com. As you heard, if you send it to us, we will actually read it once in a while earlier. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Young with Brad Charkis.
Adios.
Eleni E.
Bye, everyone.
Adam Patrick Murray's going to hit the out switch.
Go play the Lego racing thing in Forza Horizon 4.
Yes.
It's super fun.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, it's good.
Sold.